Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real professor gives you sports betting tips. This is Thursday, May 2nd, Major League Baseball. Cousin Jared, welcome back. Oh, wow.
I know it has been a while, and I have like 3 weeks worth of takes. So analysis, I may just have takes this entire show.
And for people who come here, every day but Sunday, we don't have shows for Sunday, of course. We might have a little bit of a normal length show today because I was going to say I want to hear these takes. I think the people want to hear these takes because we're all here trying to get insights, have things to think on, and as we always say with everything, take what you like and leave the rest. So you can have a take, I can have a take, we can discuss something, and you viewer are able to say, I don't agree with it. That's fine, but we want to just give you things to think on and challenge your thought process, and either you can defend it and that makes you feel really good about how you believe, or maybe think about things a little bit differently. So I was hoping that you would have some good takes here because last time we talked to you, it was really early in the betting season and we were just kind of getting our feet wet a little bit, but now we're deep enough in. We're seeing, for instance, we've been talking about this first five model, how well it's doing. It had another good day on Tuesday. And so I was hoping you would bring some takes. Do you have anything to start us off with, or are the takes coming later? Are they just going to be hopped in randomly?
Well, they're going to be random. I don't have, and unfortunately we're not talking about some of the teams that I have really hot takes about, but since you brought up the first five, love me a good first five under in my mind. And, maybe you've explained it this way before, but I feel like the first 5 innings, who the starters are going to be. Everything is just really consistent for the most part, more consistent than an entire game. Because an entire game, how are you going to utilize the bullpen at the end of the game? Is it going to be optimal pinch hitting decisions, all of those types of things? Does the game just turn into a blowout and they're just throwing guys out there to eat up innings? So I really like everybody is kind of throwing their best shot there in the first 5 innings. Like a good first 5 under for those reasons. I have found personally, I also really like dogs in the first 5 innings because a shorter sample, that is more likely that the inferior team will be able to come out on top in a smaller sample size of innings. So first 5 has been more fun this season than I remember it being in past seasons. It was data that you provided. I don't feel like you steered into it as much as you had this season. But I found the first 5 to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you've been with us for a long time, we kind of flirted with the first 5 a couple of years ago, kind of have toyed around with it, but I hadn't really done much with it until last year, kind of mid-season. I think I really started developing it, but I hadn't really done enough with it to know much about it. It was kind of like we were in the middle of the season. It's like, hey, I've built something, but I don't really, whatever. Now I've had the time and it's done really well. And so we're really steering into it. But, it does have a little bit more juice than a full game market. At least that's been the case historically. The whole thing, too, at this point that's so interesting is that we have to kind of we have to adapt with the times, right? We cannot just stay, dinosaurs living in the past, but back in the day, right? We had dime lines in baseball were so common, and that was for full games. And so when you played the first 5, you entered into a market with higher juice. And now that's not necessarily the case. At so many shops, they don't have dime lines anymore. Circa still has them. Bet Online still has them. Bet US has them for some lower numbers. And so those are, if you have the opportunity to have accounts at those places, those are great places to have. But not everyone does, of course. And so when you go to your main domestics, they don't even have dime lines. And so there's some times where the first 5, you're not even playing into a higher juice market. And so it makes more sense. But then there's some places where that first 5 is now a 15-cent split rather than a 10-cent split than some places. So it gets trying to figure out what the current landscape is. Sometimes you might play into a little more juice in that first 5 market, but and you have some higher variance, which can work to our favor or against us. But knowing who's going can, and how things may play out can be really helpful. And as we talk about, bullpens are just so tough to figure out who's even going, and the bullpens are so volatile. If you've played fantasy baseball at any point in your life, you probably hate relievers. Anybody who's played fantasy baseball for any number of time probably hates it because they can be so frustrating. You get a guy who's good and then he's terrible, or guys are supposed to be terrible or good. They're just all over the map with these small samples, and that's kind of what happens in these full games. So again, you can see the recap on screen there. Tuesday was a good day. First 5 continue to tear it up. Play of the day. A slow and steady upward trend. We're kind of like 4 and 3 every week, so we just got to keep on keeping on with the play of the day. The first 5 extra credit free pick, just tearing it up.
And I think the first 5, to everything that you just said, the first 5 also reinforces the importance of having multiple books, because not only the difference in odds, I think there's a little more variance in odds with first 5 usually, depending on when you're looking, and also some books have first 5 lines really early and you can capitalize, and then a lot of them don't come out until later. So I recall sometime this past week, I believe it was like Mariners and Braves or something, and I got first 5 under 4 minus 105, and it got down to like either 3.5 or because I was able to get it the night before. Just again, a plug. Multiple books. Never go wrong with multiple books.
For sure. And you talk about the dogs. It's funny. We've actually made some money backing the White Sox in these first 5s, which is kind of wild.
Which seems impossible. Okay, since you brought up the White Sox, here we go. Right. Here's one of my takes. So a couple of years ago, last year I bombed because the A's were terrible. But 2 years ago, it was like, I love backing the A's. Guys, they're going to win 60 to 70 games. You were going to get them at a lot of plus odds. Not once that season did I feel bad backing the A's. I want to vomit when I am backing the White Sox. It is the worst feeling in the world. And the only thing that they have going for them is that they do have a couple of starting pitchers that are going to be able to keep them in the game. Keep them in the game through the first 5 innings. I could not tell you the last time that I played a full White Sox game. It's been multiple weeks at this point since I have taken the White Sox full game and just dabbled in first 5. If it's not a very strong edge, I'm not even touching the White Sox first 5. I can't remember. Maybe the A's last year, but I don't feel like I ever got to the point where, because I kept kind of thinking to myself, well, the A's can't be this bad. The A's can't be this bad. And maybe I just don't have that, years of history to pull from with the White Sox. But this is the first team in a while where I've just been like, there is zero fun to be had here. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to subject.
I'm not sure anybody enjoys it. To be honest. And it kind of feels like when they put a position player in the pitch, right? Like you're expected as a hitter to hit a home run or crush the ball. And so there's no upside as a hitter. If you hit a home run on a position player, it's like, oh, well, cool. You did what you were supposed to do. It's like you beat the White Sox. Oh, well, cool. Like, and then you lose to them. It's embarrassing. There's no upside even for the teams to play the White Sox, it seems like. And I think you're right. The A's last year got to be that point. But last year we had Paul Blackburn on our side, which was good. And last year, towards the end of the year, when we kind of were like, man, they really are terrible, and this bullpen is historically bad, that's when we started flirting with the first 5, and we were playing some A's first 5, the same sort of thing. So, I don't think they were quite as bad as this White Sox team. Anyway, we'll move forward here. Again, if you're not with us on Dub Club, all that first 5 information, all the A-grade thresholds for run line, reverse run line, extra total stuff, all the full slate of everything I'm picking, rather than just kind of saying, here's the threshold, here's the guidelines, some of that more leading you right to the water, all that over on Dub Club, free trial to start you out if you're not there yet, a bunch of summaries, bunch of information, Discord chat, a lot of good things happening over there, QR code with the link in the show description. We'll get you started out. Again, some quick reminders here, picturetheprofessor.com/new for information about the model and community rules. Weather is subject to change. We are 24 hours out from some of these games. We are projecting an average game, one game. Anything can happen in one game. You never really know. And so that's why we think about the big picture. We are going to be dead wrong and dead right on several of them, but we're not really concerned about the one game. We're concerned about adding up the multiple games. We're going to have up days and down days, but the long run, the profit's what matters. And that's what we've shown here. It's all about the right price, the right number. Anything can be a good bet at the right price. Even the White Sox, but probably only first 5 because full game are terrifying. Just take what you like and leave the rest. And last, if you can like the show, we like that. Starting for in the daytime. Speaking of bad baseball, the Rockies and the Marlins. Peter Lambert and Edward Cabrera. Cabrera much better than his ERA would suggest. A very average pitcher. So far in his 15 innings, the underlying metrics are really encouraging. His walks are a little bit down. He's still striking guys out. If he pitches like the underlying metrics so far in his 15 innings, we might finally be seeing the Edward Cabrera breakout season we've long been hoping for. Peter Lambert, also not terrible. Better than his ERA. Underlying metrics for him, FIP and XFIP, both in the mid-3s. These are actually okay pitchers. They are not okay offenses. And honestly, they're not really okay bullpens. I think Cousin Jared, the Tuesday night game, was the perfect embodiment of this series. One team gets up, scores 5 runs in the first, then literally from the top of the first, and then literally nothing happens until the bottom of the ninth, where the other team scores not 4 to lose, not 6 to win, but exactly 5. So we had to endure more terrible baseball. It was that just is the perfect epitome of these two truly terrible baseball teams. Obviously the White Sox are worse, but this is just some depressing baseball. But it's an afternoon game, so it's at least something for us to watch here. The model says the Marlins win this 58% of the time. They are favored. They should be favored. They might be favored by a little bit too much right now. I think that people are looking at Edward Cabrera. There's still a lot of Edward Cabrera love. Again, these two teams are just so who the heck knows. Plus odds on the Rockies right now might be kind of appealing because I don't think the gap between Peter Lambert and Edward Cabrera is quite as big as people might be making it out. That's the only reason I can think why the Marlins be favored by this much, because we've seen them really struggle this year. Jordan, what's your thoughts on this game?
I might be jumping at the opportunities to back the Rockies here because Sideline has had a bit of an infatuation with the Marlins is the way that I would describe it. And even games where I have felt like, oh, well, the Marlins are short favorites here. They have a pitching edge. Like, okay, I can talk myself into that.
They still blow it.
They still blow it. And I think, and I've seen this with the way that you've been constructing some of the picks. Sometimes with the Marlins, it's just better to play Marlins -1 and get a little bit better odds. And so that way you're losing less when the Marlins lose. And to see that not only does Sideline think that the Rockies are the right side here, but that it gives it a B grade is telling me something. Again, I can't sit here and say the Rockies offense is great. It's not. It's terrible. I can't say that they have a pitching edge. They don't. But what I can say is that we've backed the Marlins multiple times this year to very, very little success. And Sideline has flipped here. And so that has caught my eye.
Yeah, from the very start of the season, we were fading the Rockies a lot. And that's worked out to be pretty well. They're 7-20 something this year. But we haven't faded the Marlins as much as we should have, who are also 7-20 something on the year. But I think you're right. And looking at this series, it's kind of that, like, you just want to be looking for plus odds anything time you're playing two terrible teams, because it's like anything can happen in this sort of game. So if you're playing the Marlins, I would play them to win big and just hope that they can cover something. But in reality, I'm not convinced of anything in this game. This game could be 2-1 or 9-8. I would be like, sure, whatever. Like, this is just some bad baseball. Because you've had Edward Cabrera in fantasy before. Do you still roster him?
I do not still roster him. But when you said that, is it time for his breakout? It's like, man,
how many years have you been hearing that?
Yeah, the stuff has always been there. It was kind of everything else, and so I hope even if he can just put it together for a few month stretches at a time, I think that'll be he'll be extremely fun to watch, even if he can just put it together in spurts. So I hope he can get a little bit more consistent.
Just a little more command for him, and the sky's the limit. Yankees and the Orioles, we do not have a starting pitcher confirmed for the Orioles. They've got a couple guys coming back. Kyle Bradish is coming back. John Means is coming back. Now, he hasn't pitched in a while and had so many injury problems, but back when he was healthy, John Means was the guy we loved to back a few years ago. He was the lone bright spot on the Orioles right before they turned the corner. Then he gets hurt and then they turn the corner. So unfortunate for him and how very little he's pitched in the last couple of years. But Bradish and Means are both coming back. We don't know who's going in this game yet for the Orioles. So those guys are supposed to be coming back here over this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday period. They've lost Grayson Rodriguez, so some roster shuffling will be happening for the Orioles. We do know it's Carlos Rodon for the Yankees, 2.48 ERA, but a FIP of 4 and an xFIP in the high 4s. I do not think that Rodon is as good as that ERA. I think he's good, not great. And I don't mean that seems like a very lukewarm take. I'm not trying to be a hot take on it. It's just, I just don't think he's, Cy Young caliber, which might be the hot take, I guess, because again, in his 6 starts, the ERA is good. But if he continues to pitch like these underlying metrics, he's going to have some outings where he gives up some runs. And again, good, just maybe not quite elite. 2 good offenses, 2 meh bullpens. Obviously, the Orioles, swapping in Craig Kimbrell for Felix Bautista is a big downgrade, to say the least, unfortunately for them. And so, what can you do there? The model has this coin toss game. If it's Bradish, TBD on who that is. But Yanks Orioles, pretty good little series, pretty fun little series so far. A hot day in Baltimore. We're talking almost 90 degrees. Wind will be blowing across, but we're going to have a little bit of a hitter-friendly atmosphere here. Ball carrying in Baltimore, almost like the old school days. Sans short left field porch.
You and I went to a game in Baltimore once, and from what I recall, it was blazing hot.
Oh my
and
gosh.
It was
the middle of the summer.
Yeah, and it was so humid. And for us being in the Houston area at the time, it was like I feel like I'm still in Houston. This is no different. This is not what I was expecting at all. So a couple of things here. Clearly, in my opinion, you mentioned Rodon been good, not great. He should have just not pitched at all last year. Like, clearly we've established that he had something wrong. Still wasn't fully recovered at the end of last season. So I'm glad to see that he's returned to decent form. The thing is, when I look at the starting pitching matchup here, potentially Bradish going, not confirmed. But I just feel like the Orioles have a bunch of these starting pitchers that are like, they're solid.
Yeah.
And you're like, the underlying metrics, is it there? It's like, the underlying metrics aren't great, but they consistently seem to actually perform just slightly better than what their underlying metrics have. And so I don't know if they have, the best pitching coach on the planet. They've found something, like when the Astros were doing all the pitch tunneling with Strom when he was there. So I don't know what it is, but when I see something like this with, like, even though it's saying this is a fairly even starting pitching matchup, I still think that I would lean towards the Orioles here, just because they have proven over the past year and a half that they don't really need a starting pitcher edge. They do better than they should. And it's gotten to the point where I kind of believe in it, and I don't think that it's just like a theory now.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of it. I think we've talked about. I'm not sure we've talked about it much this year. We talked about it last year and the year before, right? It's the Adley Rutschman effect, right? How much he's making those pitchers better, which is the same thing we saw with Buster Posey a few years ago, right? He helps that Giants team do so well in 2019. He takes 2020 off to be with his family during COVID, and they are terrible. He comes back on 2020 and 21, and they're good again. Then the Giants struggle in 2022 a little bit, and then they get Patrick Bailey, who's like a good defensive catcher. They're a little bit better again, right? And how much a good catcher can really change things. And Rutschman's been kind of the guy. A lot of the turnaround for the Orioles has been since he's come up, and it's been him making their pitchers go from meh to how are they this good? They shouldn't be this good, but they continue to get results. And so, yeah, it's something with the pitch coach, something with the catcher, whatever it may be. But we've consistently seen this with the Orioles. They just kind of get it done. And it's shocking that we're still more backing the Orioles than fading them. And I feel like that's surprising because we've had that approach with them for the last almost 2 years now. And it's continued to work. And it's like the books and the market just don't seem to care. They're just never going to adjust. And, so I'm like you, if it's a coin toss, I'm leaning Orioles just because, like you said, they just find ways to get it done. And it's a good team, good coach, good catcher, good whatever it is. It's not a small sample size fluky thing with them.
And never thought I'd like reach the point in my life where I would say this, but it is a lot more fun when the Yankees are at least kind of good. So you can not like them because, definitely at times it's just been like, I don't really care about the Yankees because they're just not great. And that's just a weird feeling. So
sports are better when the villain teams are good so that you can hate them.
Yes. And so the Yankees are working their way back into my bad graces.
There you go. Cubs and Mets still in the afternoon, 1:10 first pitch. Nice day in New York if you can get out and catch a ball game, mid to low 70s. What are we blowing out at 5 to 10 miles an hour? It's going to make the park play a little bit less pitcher friendly than usual. Will still be on average more pitcher friendly than hitter friendly. Ben Brown versus Adrian Hauser. Folks, this is a massive starting pitcher mismatch here. Ben Brown probably better than his 4.30 ERA, FIP of 3.16, xFIP in the mid threes, projects more right around 4. But Adrian Hauser not as bad as that 8.37 ERA. Again, ERA is not really very predictive, especially in a situation like this. But his FIP's close to 5 and his xFIP's in the low 6. I mean, this is one of the probably more underrated pitchers, I believe, in Ben Brown. I think he's probably, when you look at how good someone is versus how much respect and talk about Ben Brown might be towards the top of that leaderboard, right? He's not better than a bunch of guys ahead of him necessarily, but he's probably better than a lot of guys that get talked about more than him. Whereas Adrian Hauser is probably on the flip side of that. I mean, one of the worst pitchers in baseball who is going to be benefited by playing at a pitcher's friendly park, but hasn't been so far even this year. Otherwise, the Mets do have an edge at reliever, maybe a slight edge offensively, but it's as much as it might not look that way. You have to trust me when I say this, these offensive ratings, that's pretty much rounding error. That the talent discrepancy is not quite as large as it is in college sports necessarily. Like a 96 grade to a 103 grade is not a huge difference in these offenses. And so it's on the strength of that starting pitcher mismatch that the model says the Cubs win this 54% of the time. The A grade threshold is minus 104, Cousin Jared. As long as you're playing minus 105, I think it's probably good enough to lock in an A grade on the Cubs. I love the starting pitcher mismatch. What's your take?
I love the starting pitcher mismatch as well. I don't know what I was expecting from the Mets this year, but they've been a little bit better than I thought they would be. And when you go look at how they have done it, they haven't gotten much from Francisco Lindor. They haven't got much from Brett Beatty. JD Martinez just joined the team. They haven't got much from Francisco Alvarez. I think
who's now hurt, right?
Yeah. And so if they can get people healthy, if they can get those guys going, I think this team can be pretty good. This is not the night to back them, though, because of the starting pitching mismatch here. I have faith in a few of the Giants pitchers, and I'm going to go with Adrian Hauser is not one of them. And sometimes when you get guys into like the 120s like this, you can sometimes see them have a good outing and it'll pop down to, maybe like a 119, 118, something like that. You can get a little bit more movement here on the periphery of these ratings. No, Adrian Hauser's good to just stay in the 120s. Him and Patrick Corbin just kind of hanging out down there. So yeah, I love the Cubs in this one. I think I'm like kind of, if I were like buying stock, I'd be buying the Mets, just not in this game.
Right. And like I said, they need to stay healthy. They're so paper thin. Senga, Lucchesi, Tyler McGill on the or one of the McGills, whichever one, I can't remember which one's which, all injured as of now, forcing them to have a guy like this who really has no business being in the rotation. They might be better if they go to a guy like Christian Scott down in AAA, who's probably ready to come up and pitch at this point. It's not like he's 19, he's 25. The Mets are such an interesting case. Last year when they decided to give up, which was the right call, they moved Scherzer and they moved Verlander. And I remember one of the biggest critiques of that was you're saving a bunch of money for next year by getting rid of your expensive starting pitchers, and then you won't have any starting pitchers. It's like, that's where they are now. And of course, some of it's injuries, but injuries are going to happen, especially in today's day and age where every single pitcher, every single game is throwing every pitch as hard as he can. Like, injuries are going to be more commonplace. Yep. And so it's so interesting that it was like, they're like rebuilding for this next year, for the next year's coming, but they really hurt themselves for this kind of intermediate short term. And I think it's why I'm with you. I didn't expect much from the Mets this year, because when they made that move to get rid of, Verlander, Scherzer, in that situation, it was like, well, they're not going to have the caliber of guys, but they got a couple decent guys in the rotation. The bullpen's kind of decent. The offense is kind of okay. They're a very okay team, but they got to get the right guys healthy. They got to get the right guys performing, because they don't really have any depth. And I mean, if they're going to compete, they really got to get Adrian Hauser out of the rotation. No offense to the guy, but he's just not helping them.
Yeah. And with everything you just said, I would have thought that the Mets would be like 5 games under 500 and not 1 game over 500. So
500. Yeah, the Mets are weird, I guess, is the bottom line. Every year it seems like they find a way to be weird. Again, minus 105, probably acceptable for an A grade on the Cubs there if you're looking to back them. But as always, folks, remember, multiple books, shopping around, every 5 cents you can save makes you more when you win, costs you less when you lose. We're going to have wins, we're going to have losses, and so price really matters. If you don't have an account there yet, BetUS, you can sign up at the link in the show description and get a 125% bonus on your first ever 3 deposits.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Moving on, still in the afternoon, though, Giants and the Red Sox, 1:35 p.m. Eastern, first pitch. Upper 60s for this game. Wind will be blowing out to left center at 10 miles an hour. We're talking about a situation that's going to help the hitters even more than usual. The ball, the temperature will not be, hot, flying out like crazy, but we don't typically see temperatures much warmer than this in Boston on an average game, because many games are at night and they're so far north, on the water, et cetera. This is actually a pretty reasonable temperature here for them. And a wind blowing out to left center is just going to take doubles off the green monster, turn them into home runs, or balls that might have been routine outs, put them off the wall, especially as it gets deeper there in left center. So we've got a pretty hitter-friendly ballpark already, going to be even more hitter-friendly on this one. So expecting a lot of runs. Kyle Harrison and Josh Winkowski, 2 pretty respectable pitchers here. Harrison maybe slightly better than his 4.09 ERA. Underlying metrics have him in the upper 3s. Very respectable, very solid. Josh Winkowski's been very good in his 8-10 innings so far in the big leagues this year. He's been back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen. It seems like his whole career, but so far so good for him, and he's been very respectable. Reasonable pitching, mediocre offenses, good bullpens, but in that park, we're expecting a lot of runs. Models projecting 10. In a game that we think the Red Sox should be slight favorites. They are slight favorites. I I'm curious your take on this one, cousin Jared. Is it worth trying to play a side, or are you just eyeing that total and just thinking we might see our first, 20-run game of the year, or something silly with this sort of weather?
Yeah, I'm probably more eyeing the total than a side here. When you get to games like this where there are a lot of runs but two evenly matched teams, like you could get a game like this in, I don't know, Kaufman, Cincinnati, any of those high scoring places, and it could just be one team's way better than the other one. It's like, sure, take back the favorite. Here, where the game's so close, I don't think I'd want to pick a side. I think I'd like to focus on the total. I was interested to see the grade that you had for the Giants offense there, because you always think of the Giants offense as being, I mean, at least my impression, usually subpar. And it's like, but how much of that is because of where they play versus, their actual offensive output? I feel like in my mind, like obviously I have sideline here to tell me. So that's eventually how I get over it. But in my mind, I always kind of struggle with, okay, are these teams really not great offensively? Are they just average, or is it just the park? And then if they go from playing in San Francisco to playing a game here in Boston, where the offensive profile of the park in general is so much better, and then you factor in the weather, how much does that play into things? So anyway, this is just an example of an area where I really rely on sideline, because in my mind it's always like, well, the Giants offense is average at best, but really it's like that's mostly because of the park. Put them in a place like Fenway where the weather's right, they're going to be just as likely to score runs as anybody else.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think for both of these offenses, they're both very mad. The Red Sox probably a little bit better than the model would grade them out now when they're fully healthy. Obviously, down a guy like Trevor Story right now matters because they don't have a ton of depth. But I think it's an interesting case for both of them, in that both of these offenses so far, and we're only a month into the season, but have had a lot of games where they have disappeared and just completely no-showed. And they both have games where they look great and they can put up plenty of runs. And the difference, of course, is that when the Red Sox are playing half their games in a hitter-friendly environment, the Giants are playing half their games not, it kind of can skew the brain a little bit. Obviously, the Giants didn't put up much of anything offensively on Tuesday night, which again goes back to the inconsistency. Is I think that's the biggest problem with the Giants offense, is they're inconsistent. But they definitely have the pieces. You get a guy like Jorge Soler here at Fenway Park, and he could easily hit 6 home runs by just hitting routine fly balls to left field, because that guy hits a pop fly to left field. It's over the monster, probably with his strength. Yeah. So anything can happen, obviously. In that park, we always talk about it being high variance with regards to how it plays. Total on this one right now, I'm seeing 9, heavily juiced. I'm assuming you would lay the 9 with the juice rather than 9.5. Going over 9.5 is never a fun thing to do. Is that correct?
I would always recommend laying the juice. As an example, yesterday I was able to get over 7 -125 in the Pirates and A's game, and that got me a push as opposed to a loss. So yeah, I'm always willing to pay a little bit of extra juice on some of these totals.
On set 7 and 9, I feel like are the 2 numbers where you pay juice. Otherwise, you don't pay the juice. There's no benefit to it. The other numbers don't happen enough. You might as well get the better price and the odds. But yeah, 7 and 9 are the 2 key numbers in baseball, where kind of like 3 in football, where it's like, you're in that 3, you might pay a little more juice because you know how likely it is to have that. So yeah, over 9 with some juice on this one. Maybe a first 5 total as well, as the bullpens in this game project to be pretty reasonable, but should expect a lot of runs given the park and the weather conditions. Still in the afternoon here, last afternoon game for Thursday, 2:35 p.m. first pitch. Nationals at the Rangers, low 80s, likely closing the roof there in Arlington. My boy Mitchell Parker against Nathan Eovaldi. Parker continues to look really good, 1.69 ERA. FIP also in the ones, not sustainable, but insanely good so far. xFIP in the upper 2s. A guy who just he struggled at his first inning against the Marlins in his last start, and then got it together and had a really good rest of the game. Had looked really good in his first 2 starts against the Dodgers and the Astros. To face the Dodgers, the Astros, and the defending World Series champion Rangers in your first over 3 starts, that is quite a start to a career. But Silent has right now is the 25th best pitcher in baseball. We love this guy. Massive faith in him. Nathan Eovaldi, very solid, very respectable, very good pitcher. you expect smaller error bars with Eovaldi because he's been around longer, of course, than Parker. And Parker has a much bigger challenge in his hands facing the Rangers than Eovaldi, who gets to face the Nats offense that's towards the bottom in baseball. But again, not terrible. They're not necessarily, Rockies, White Sox level bad, but towards the bottom. We've got the Rangers, as favored in this one, as they should be, winning 60% of the time. But right now, the price in the Rangers has gotten to be a little bit of a runaway. We've liked the Rangers a lot this year. And so kind of my take on this, and I'm curious to see if you have the same thoughts, is we've kind of liked the Rangers a lot this year. We haven't really liked the Nats a lot this year, but we've liked the Nats. It's gone well. And so anytime the model says the Nats are the smart value pick, that's kind of where my head is. The current price of about plus 170 would be a B grade right now for the Nats. Need another dime for it to get to the A grade. But whether it's Nats full game or maybe first five, where you say, hey, it's just the starting pitcher duel, and we don't necessarily have to get into the bullpens where the Rangers would have an edge. Maybe a first five play on the Nats makes a lot of sense. Because, Jared, what's your take on this game?
Yeah, I am backing the Nationals for that very reason. Sideline is liked backing the Rangers, and so the fact that it is flipped here, catches my eye. Have a couple of hot takes here. I'm not really sure anybody in the AL West is good. And if I had to pick a team, like, easy to say because they're leading the division right now, but like, I guess the Mariners starting pitching is kind of like what I think separates them. So they would be my pick right now. But man, I don't think anybody there is good. And so that line of thinking enters this when I start thinking about backing the Nationals at a B grade here. The Nationals have been better than I anticipate, or let me put it this way. Their record's better than I anticipated. And CJ Abrams, very good. How far can he carry them? If I'm trying to kind of look at glass half empty for the Nationals, I'm going to go with 7 of their wins have come against. So half of their wins have come against the A's, Astros, and Marlins. And so I think that we are going to find out a little bit more about this team. Next couple of series, going to be playing the Rangers right now, then the Blue Jays, the Orioles, and the Red Sox.
The glass half full because they've already finished all their series with the Dodgers this year.
Yes, they have, and somehow managed to win 3 of those games.
Yeah.
So kudos to them for 2 of those games. So kudos to them for that, more than I would have anticipated. But this is a team that, like, let's come back in 2 weeks and see where they are in 2 weeks. And I think we'll have a lot better idea of how the rest of the season is going to go for them.
The Nets are a great example of what we always talk about, which is early in the season. How much do you overreact or not? And there's a lot of ways you can look at this: glass half full, glass half empty, close left eye, close the right eye, what you get. I still go back to like Luis Garcia hitting cleanup for them as a second baseman is like, gosh, that's still like, it's still a sign to me that their offense is in trouble. But like, he's done well so far. It's just like maybe this is his breakout season and he's going to become like the next, Jose Altuve / Jeff Kent, right? Whatever. Yeah. But like, there's definitely some concerns. But like, Jacob Young, if he's hitting 9-hole and stealing 100 bases or whatever he's doing, right? You get that. Mm-hmm. And Gallo at this point's been so terrible and injured. But like, if he can come back and be healthy, it's like they've got some of the right pieces, but there's still a bunch of issues. Yeah, I think with this team. And so it's trying to figure out, how much do we react to say, like, they played better than the model has graded them out for? Absolutely. But does that mean that's going to continue? I'm like you, like, let's come back in a month or so and see, how we feel about that. And the model is kind of saying like, yeah, they're not bad, but maybe they're not quite as good as this. But I think to your point, like the AL West, I mean, what in the world is going on? The Astros, Wednesday's game hasn't happened yet, but Tuesday, putting up all those runs on Carrasco, getting that big lead, and then what was supposed to be the strength of the team, especially with an entire rotation on the IL, the bullpen, just terrible, almost blows it for them, and they need a walk-off, home run to win in the 10th inning. It's like the Astros have had their issues. The Rangers definitely look hungover. The Mariners' offense is questionable. Their bullpen is, again, a little bit weaker than it's ever been before. The good thing for the Mariners, they have 4 really good pitchers. The fifth, Emerson Hancock, is the one getting lit up right now against the Braves, thankfully for us, since we love the Braves here on Wednesday afternoon. But the other 4 guys are really good. But the Angels, of course, with Trout now again injured. I mean, the AOS was supposed to be the division with like 4 good teams, and I'm not sure they have one at this point. It's like, is the AL Central better than the AL West now? It blows my mind what we're seeing so far with this division. That can't be true, right?
Yeah, and I'm just going to go out on a limb when you talked about Luis Garcia being, if he could turn into Jose Altuve or Jeff Kent. But the comp that I came up with, if we could get like a 2004 Marcus Giles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think because you're wearing the Braves uniform. I think that would probably be like, that's who I'm aim for. Let's get to Marcus Giles before we go to either of those other guys.
That's why you come to the show, people, is to hear Cousin Jared throw out 2004 Marcus Giles, a name I have not thought about in literally over a decade. Speaking of the Astros in that AL West, they are the one-night game here on Thursday, 8:10 p.m. Eastern, first pitch. Low 70s. They could open the roof if they want to. Should play about the same either way. Lefty Logan Allen for the Guardians, the American League Logan Allen versus the National League Logan Allen against Spencer Arrighetti. Arrighetti's underlying metrics are not as bad as his ERA. FIP in the upper threes, xFIP in the low fours. That said, I still have zero faith in him whatsoever, especially against the Guardians lineup that is so left-handed heavy. That can definitely do some damage against righties. Logan Allen, a lefty, the Astros project really well against lefties. Has not been fantastic this year. 5.46 ERA, FIP in the low fours, xFIP a little bit better. Folks, the relievers in this game stand to be the strength, but the relievers, we'll see how Wednesday's game goes. This is where I definitely would not be betting the full game until I see how Wednesday's game goes, because Tuesday's game, where both teams had an off day on Monday, reset everything. The way the bullpens had to be used on Tuesday, Josh Hader throws 2 for the Astros. Presley throws an inning, and Abreu throws a ton of pitches. Guardians use a bunch of their guys, been using a bunch of their guys previously. Then you go to Wednesday's game, which again hasn't happened yet. By the time you're watching this, it will have happened. But you've got Tristan McKenzie going, who we have no faith in. Justin Verlander, who has been good in his 2 starts, but still with the age, you just never quite know. If the bullpen usage gets wonky on Wednesday, and then you come into Thursday where I expect the Astros to put up some runs on Logan Allen, and I don't really have a lot of faith in Arrighetti. Folks, this game could get – Wednesday's and Thursday's game could get really weird with regards to the amount of runs and the bullpen usage. Right now, we'd have the Astros at slight favorites, but again, I cannot emphasize enough. This is a massive asterisk on. Let's see who's even available on the bullpens before we start talking about the full game stuff. That's the benefit of the first 5, which we talked about at the start of the show. We know who's starting. We kind of know how the first 4-ish innings will play out. We'll say 5 for rounding error. Back half of this game, I have no idea what's going to happen because these bullpen situations could get really weird, could have a lot of runs. What's your take on this game, Cousin Jerry?
I am backing the Guardians as long as sideline tells me to. A team that's 19-10 or whatever they are. The sum of the parts, whatever. Some of the whole greater than the parts or whatever it is. Yeah. That feels Guardians-y to me. I'm getting 2021 Guardians, 2022 Guardians, can't remember which one. Getting vibes of them.
2022 is the year we backed them a lot.
Okay, yeah. I feel like
good to us, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting that vibe from this team. On the flip
side,
with
a much better offense than I've seen the Guardians have in like a decade, I think.
Yes, and so definitely nice to see that. On the flip side,
no one checked me on that. A decade-ish, been a long time. I don't know.
Yeah, flip that the other way. Fading the Astros until sideline says otherwise. There's no immediate help coming to the Astros rotation.
Which is the first time we've been able to say that in a decade plus.
Yes.
Because there's always been help coming.
Yep.
And now part of the problem is there's already 5 guys in the IL. So literally all the help's already here. Yep. Had we started off with nobody hurt, it'd be different. But there's always been guys to call up. And now it's like, they're already here. They're all here. They're all hurt. There's just nothing else.
Yep. There's no help coming to the bullpen.
No.
There is, I think the offense is, in my opinion, I think the offense is kind of like tapped out. I mean, Altuve has an OPS of over 1,000. Kyle Tucker has an OPS of 967. Like, could Jordan go up from 807 OPS? Sure.
Bregman's really struggled, of course. He hit the home run last night, which is
Bregman has struggled, but that's Bregman. He does this
he always starts off
March, April, May. So he'll come along. But like, as much as he comes along, Altuve could have a great year. He's not going to have over 1,000 OPS for the whole season.
Right.
As much as he's going to come along, Altuve is going to come down.
He's going to have a stretch where he looks terrible, and that's just the way
And so I say all of this just to say what we have seen from the Astros so far, I expect to see very much a similar thing for the next probably couple of months at least. And it's been very profitable to fade the Astros. So, I mean, it's kind of all I got.
What a depressing way to end the show for us as Astros fans. I will say though, and I don't want to turn this into a talk therapy session necessarily, but I do think it's good to talk about these teams and how they're looking and whatnot, because if you're sports betting right now on baseball, we've been telling you to fade the Astros for the most part and saying, hey, be careful about the price. We backed them on Tuesday. My God, escaped with a win and just I don't know about you personally. I was like, we got the win back in the Astros. I never want to do that again because it was so frustrating. As a fan of this team, it's so frustrating. But I think with the Astros, and I'm going to say all this because again, I'm going to challenge your thought process, viewer. I want you to think through this, and I want you to see what you agree with, what you disagree with, etc. But a lot of times when a talented team starts off and struggles, you say, "Here's the reasons for optimism why things will change." X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And it's guys that are really good have been struggling, and they should turn things around. Kind of like you mentioned with the offense, I don't think it'll be the case. I think the biggest thing that can happen is the bullpen can turn things around a little bit, and maybe they can go from losing some of the close games to winning some of them, like the Braves series where they lost a couple close ones. Maybe the bullpen performs a little bit better. Maybe they win a couple of those games. That's kind of their hope. But it does seem like this team is a little bit limited ceiling-wise because they can't really do anything in the trade market. And that's the other area where a team like this that's struggling could go out, make a splash, make an early season trade. Don't wait until middle or end of July and go get somebody. But they can't go add another reliever. Like Abreu, Presley, Hader, what are they going to do to add to that? Those guys have struggled. They have not been that good. You just have to wait and hope they figure it out. Rotation wise, you've got 9 starting pitchers on your roster. You've just got half of them hurt. You can't go add more because then what are you going to do when guys start getting healthy? You only have so much room in your budget. Offensively, what are they going to go do? They could maybe, in a perfect world, they could go out and get another outfielder, go get a center fielder, I guess. But first base has been a huge problem. But what are they going to do about that? Now they've got all this money to Abreu. They just sent him down so he can hopefully figure it out. What? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do from a GM standpoint to make the team better. So your only hope is starting pitchers get healthy, bullpen comes around. And I think kind of to your point, that's why I wanted to have this quick little discussion is if the price is right, we want to back the Astros for sure. But there's no reason not to fade them when they don't have a strong starting pitcher going, because there's not really anything that you're like, no, this is about to change, because it's just about the bullpen whenever they figure it out, but it hasn't happened yet. And until it does, you can't really have a lot of faith in it, which goes back to what I said, a big asterisk on this game with regards to a full game projection, because the bullpen situation is going to be so vital. Whatever happens Tuesday really affecting into Wednesday now into Thursday. The first 5 market might be a smarter play, but right now, again, the current price in the Guardians plus 120 would get you a B grade as you're about a nickel away from an A grade of the Guardians. And again, I don't love fading the Astros with Verlander on the hill. Fading the Astros with Arrighetti on the hill, sure. Sign me up, especially if the price is right. The model says this is close-ish to a coin toss. The Astros should be slight favorites, but maybe not quite as favored as they are. But as I mentioned yesterday, the market's reaction to the Astros really is confusing to me. I don't really think the market even knows what to make of this team. They might be the most confusing team in baseball at this point. Because that's all the games here for Thursday. Parting words from your triumphant return to the show.
I'll save everybody 1 week of how many days it is until college football season.
There you go. I guess we're seeing spring games happening, and I guess the weather's just warming up. You're right. The weather's going to start cooling down before we get into college football season, but I guess it'll be here before we know it. Again, folks, if you're not with us already on Dub Club, check that out. And of course, because Jared mentions college football, we had a great college football and NFL season last year. And so if you're looking to sign up on Dub Club to get more baseball picks over the summer, those football picks will be here before you know it. 10-day free trial to start you out with that link in the show description. Otherwise, everyone, thanks for watching. Best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.